In 1998, Independence Day director Roland Emmerich Americanized this iconic Japanese monster with state-of-the-art CGI in this big-budget Hollywood blockbuster starring Matthew Broderick, Godzilla.
What did you see, old man?
Godzilla. Godzilla. Godzilla.
Calling all podcasters. We interrupt this broadcast to bring you a special bulletin, reporting live from the We Can Make This Work Probably Podcast Network. We are receiving reports of, well, what can only be described as a gigantic ape rampaging through the streets of New York City. Wait, this just in. According to our overseas correspondents, there's been a confirmed sighting of a massive reptilian creature off the coast of Japan. Oh, the humanity! If you have any information regarding these two Goliath monsters or their film franchises, please record on your dictaphone and post or telegraph your audio transmission to us at probablywork.com. Please, hurry. Time is running out. We've just been told that the mayor is evacuating the city and the president dispatching military forces. I don't know how to describe what I'm looking at, dear listeners. They appear to be squaring off. Jeez. This is it, people. The battle of the century. It's Godzilla versus Kong. A fire-breathing lizard takes on the giant angry ape. In this, a no-holds-barred clash between the king of the monsters and the titan of Skull Island. Who will come out on top? Why are they fighting? How did that monkey get so big? Find out on the latest season of Podcasters Assemble, Kongzillathon.
Podcasters, assemble!
This is Chris from the Comic Zombie Podcast.
This is Troidal Power from the Power Playthroughs Podcast.
Hi, this is Justin Aki, graphic designer and one-half of Significant Otter Co.
Yo, this is Corey from The World Is My Burrito.
Hello, I'm Stephen White. I am the co-host of the Super Mega Crash Brothers Turbo podcast.
Eric Slater here from Epic Fails of History and Too Young for This Trek.
Hello, this is MC from the best animated shows ever, so far.
Hello, I'm Robert Kelly, host and writer of Record All Monsters.
We were talking about Godzilla, 1998.
The U.S. Godzilla film from 1998.
Godzilla 98.
Oh man, I've been dreading this one.
Come with me. Do, 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 do. And let's talk about 1998's Godzilla.
So basically, after driving themselves into the ground with the Godzilla franchise, Henry G. Saperstein approached Toho about making a movie back in '92, and Toho was all over it because Godzilla in the 60s and 70s had kind of gone dry, and like 84, 89, 90, 91, they had developed this very particular rut where they would spend a certain amount on a movie and basically make a certain amount on a Godzilla movie, and this wasn't going anywhere. So they were super hype about the possibility of getting America in on this because, hey, it's America, the largest film industry, and it would be the freshest flavor for the Godzilla franchise.
So we go from like the, trend-setting and game-changing King Kong to probably the mother of all 50s monster movies in Gojira. Now we come to maybe the bottom of the barrel when it comes to big monster movies.
This movie, it's a good movie.
Oh, it's bad. It's impossibly bad.
So thinking back, this might actually have been my first exposure to Godzilla.
It's a terrible Godzilla movie, but it's a good 1990s movie overall.
I don't know if I saw this movie in theaters.
I believe my first time seeing this film was in theaters when I was 11 years old.
I first saw this in theaters as a kid.
Think back to the summer of 1997. You're going to turn 5 in a few months. It's the 4th of July weekend, and you're going to the movies with your family.
But I definitely saw it around when it came out, and I think that was due in large part to marketing for it. I think it was Taco Bell that it had a tie-in with.
I have to admit up front that I got caught up in the hype to this movie.
The 90s were an amazing time for action sci-fi popcorn movies.
The Will Smith classic Men in Black has just been released, and you couldn't be more excited. You love The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which you watch in syndication after school at your grandma's house. And this summer movie season has already been packed with treats for you, specifically.
How 90s is it? Every time they go to a different location, they put some sort of dumb technophone on screen with the sound of, like, I don't know, computer-generated type, like hacker stuff. It's so dumb.
This one in particular had an insane marketing campaign, complete with a Taco Bell sweepstakes, toys, a cartoon, and even a Puff Daddy music video.
There was a very quiet campaign going on. This was pre-internet, so you had Entertainment Weekly magazines where you'd kind of keep up with certain things going on in the news. I heard that there was a Godzilla movie coming. I didn't know when it was coming out or anything like that. I had seen that the creators of Independence Day were behind it, so I had some interest in it because it's Godzilla, and I love Godzilla up to this point in time.
This is like the 5th, 6th time I've seen this film. It's one of those things we get occasionally from Blockbuster every once in a while. I think it was on television at one point.
The marketing on this was super clever because they went out of their way to not show Godzilla. The poster just showed his foot.
And I got hyped.
Back in May, The Lost World Jurassic Park was a fun but pretty scary experience.
I remember being freaked out by this movie when I first saw it. That's the big thing. It was scary to little Troy. I mean, this would have come out when I was about 9 years old.
So you're sitting down, fighting with your sister over who gets to sit between mom and dad in case things get scary, and the trailers start rolling. A bunch of kids are in a museum, and there's a slow build to reveal the skeleton of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Cool, T-Rex, yeah. And as the museum guide drums on, the earth starts to shake. The security guard looks nervous, and then crash, stomp, crunch! A great big monster foot smashes through the roof. It's the same size as the absolutely decimated T-Rex bones. It lifts away and you see a huge lizard-like tail swish through the museum's brand new sunroof.
So, yeah, this is a pretty scary monster movie, and was my first monster movie. And in fact, up until the start of this project, this was the only Godzilla and or King Kong movie that I'd ever seen.
Green text on the now black screen says, "Guess who's coming to town?" Slowly, the word Godzilla appears in slick-looking black text, outlined by a dangerous-looking lime green aura. A familiar screonk is heard, and the screen flashes. Memorial Day, 1998.
Like, I was so excited for this movie.
You're shaking, folks. Hell, I'm shaking even remembering the excitement.
So I got swept up in it big time.
The tagline for the movie was, I kid you not, size does matter.
When 1998 rolled around, all of a sudden, I wasn't so lonely. Let me explain. When I was 3 years old, my mom took me and my sisters to Hollywood Video. And as I walked down the aisles, looking for something to satisfy my dinosaur-obsessed child brain, I saw one of the most beautiful things I had encountered up to that point in my life. A VHS tape. The VHS tape. I couldn't read super well, but I could recognize the word God, like a good Catholic boy, and Zilla, Godzilla. Godzilla? Godzilla. It was a dinosaur fighting, holy crap, a robot dinosaur. For close to 2 years, I tried to share my discovery with my friends, who reacted with the full range of emotions, from indifference all the way up to not caring. Finally, the marketing blitz began, and Godzilla was everywhere. I was thrilled, and I wasn't alone. Not only were my friends into Godzilla now too, but there were suddenly toys, books, and tapes of the movies that you could buy and keep, not like at the rental store. The whole thing culminated for me the day the movie came out. It was Wednesday, May 20th, 1998. My dad picked me up from school early, with the local paper open on his truck's passenger seat. An article detailing the then 40-plus years of the Godzilla franchise faced up at me. I couldn't read well enough to get all of it, but I knew where we were going.
I mean, there's obviously ones that the production values are way, way, way lower. And, Son of Godzilla, Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster, some of those Toho Kong films, yeah, they're worse, I guess.
I know this movie gets a lot of hate, and I'm not going to say that I don't have certain feelings about it or that I didn't have certain feelings about it at some point in time.
My dad says I wasn't that thrilled with the movie, though I don't remember it that way. Not quite that way.
But I have learned to appreciate it over time.
I remember waiting for Godzilla to fight something, and I do remember not much liking that Godzilla died, but I was optimistic that the promised sequel would get it right.
I don't view it as a typical Godzilla movie in the same regards to the other films in the series that come from Japan, even the newer American versions.
I went through the whole hate thing for this movie when I was a teenager, but now when I think of this entry in the series, I don't think of the many things I don't like about it. I think of the year leading up to its release, and the community and camaraderie that grew up around me, and how for a few months in the late 90s, everyone was a Godzilla fan.
But I do view it as a fun popcorn movie because there are some fun moments in it. It's a typical blockbuster from the 90s.
Long and the short, a bunch of stuff happens, and it takes until 98 to release this film that we see.
But for the money behind this thing, for it to look like it does, and for it to be as poorly made as it is pretty inexcusable. It's really, I mean, just right from the get-go, it's pretty bad. It doesn't really give you much to hang on to.
I kind of love the opening credits, cutting between H-bomb test footage and various lizards, iguanas, and Komodo dragons.
My wife and I also debated if the soundtrack to this movie was the best soundtrack of a film for the late 90s to early 2000s.
Puff Daddy raps to the instrumentals of Led Zeppelin's Kashmir from 1975. But it turns out that Jimmy Page actually went back and re-recorded his guitar riff for the song.
I kind of like the score a little bit. It's not your traditional Godzilla themes, but I mean, it works.
I think it has like 4 good songs in it, and I think that Spider-Man 2 soundtrack was a straight banger.
The movie opens in a Japanese fishing boat, and the radar picks up like this blob, and everyone freaks out like, there's a blob!
Just like the original, an industrial Japanese fishing ship is attacked.
Would have been nice to have subtitles, maybe. I mean, I know it's just, they're scared, but we have no idea like what's happening. What appear to be claws puncture through the hull, and this giant tail smacks the bridge, and the boat starts going down. I can see what they tried to do. As far as cold opens go, it's not that effective.
I remember when I first saw this, I wondered what worms had to do with Godzilla.
Matthew Broderick, also known as Nick Tetanopoulos.
Matthew Broderick is so good in this movie.
Tardigrade.
Matthew Broderick annoyed me. I was 5 when this movie came out.
We do a hard cut to Matthew Broderick's character singing in the car. He's singing in the rain as he's driving around at Chernobyl. Okay.
My favorite character is definitely Varys.
Tatanopoulos.
He plays the nerdy scientist that's here to deal with a natural disaster so dang well.
Matthew Broderick is not exactly the person I would say is the action star.
And then also somehow becomes an action hero by the end of the movie.
Matthew Broderick already annoyed me.
Without ever really breaking character. Like, he never does any action hero stuff.
But he's not supposed to be. He's supposed to be this scientist who's been working around radioactivity and studying the effects it has on other creatures like the worms outside of Chernobyl.
It just works.
He sets up this weird-ass contraption, like shocks worms out of the ground. And it's just, I don't know, it's just really weird. Then this helicopter shows up with American soldiers. They just, I guess got to fly right into Ukraine and no problems. And we learn that his name is Nico Tatopoulos.
Tattoo Necrosis. Tata Metropolis?
Okay, this is going to be like a recurring joke throughout the film that nobody can pronounce his name. For like the first, 6-7 scenes that he's in, almost every line he has starts with Tatopoulos. Because everyone's like, Nico Papalopoulos, and it's just, why?
Tataopoulos, that's it. Anywho, Nick Tartakowski.
It actually starts out with Matthew Broderick's character looking at the size increase of worms near Chernobyl.
The scientist studying radiation on mutated worms in Chernobyl when he's recruited by some military types to investigate something.
So his character is not meant to be the action star.
Why is his name Totopoulos? Not that there's a problem with it, or Greek names, but like either just make it his name and just move on, or make it something different. I mean, there's nothing Greek about his character. His name could easily be like Nick Harris, and there would be absolutely no difference. So I don't know. It was really, really stupid. Anyway, they tell him like, hey, your job here is done. We've got a new job for you.
He's brought to a site in Tahiti where they recreate the giant radioactive footprint scene from the original.
So we cut back to Nico and the American soldiers. We find out he works for like the Nuclear Commission, and they've brought him to study this really cheesy looking footprint in the ground. That's definitely a Godzilla footprint. His team is like a bunch of wacky doctors straight out of like Twister. You know, God damn it. It's so lackluster and just like minimum effort, you know?
There was a scene right at the beginning after the boat accident that I always thought would have had more of an impact from a dramatic standpoint if they would have let it sit and not replay it throughout the movie.
And then we cut to a hospital where we see Jean Reno from, Leon the Professional, like one of the coolest actors who just, for some reason, is always in shit movies.
And that's when the Japanese sailor, the survivor from the initial boat attack,
he's in this hospital that has the last, or I guess the only survivor of the sinking ship in the cold open.
Was questioned, and he wouldn't say anything.
And he's kind of in shock. So Reno sparks a lighter in front of him, which I guess is enough to whatever, and asked him what he saw.
Jean Reno's character asked him what he saw.
We see the lone survivor of the doomed vessel, an elderly Japanese man who keeps repeating, Gojira.
And he just said, Gojira.
He just says, Godzilla.
What did you see, old man?
Godzilla. Godzilla. Godzilla.
And they replayed it so much throughout the movie that I felt like it took away the impact of that scene.
So they watched this crappy video, which is like somehow the exact same shots as the hospital that we saw, even though there didn't seem to be a camera right next to Jean Reno, so we see like his POV on the videotape. I don't know, whatever.
Because once you hear it again and again and again in clips and whatnot, it doesn't have the same impact that it did in that moment, with the music kind of backing it up.
Also, after doing all the islands, Panama, all that, they put in the city that doesn't sleep for New York. Yeah.
We cut to New York, where it's always raining, and we meet Matthew Broderick's ex-girlfriend, Audrey, who is an aspiring reporter at a news station, and her boss is a total creep.
We then cut to New York, where Harry Shearer from The Simpsons is in charge of a newsroom, and they're all kind of complaining about nothing's going on. And
a lot of the supporting characters are kind of fun.
His assistant is the girl that we saw in Totopoulos' truck, who has some pictures on his equipment. So it's clear that there's some kind of relationship there.
And Harry Shearer is cast perfectly as the news reporter. What's his name?
Shearer tells her that she's one of the finalists for this job opportunity, and then he really creepily hits on her, kind of insinuating that she can have the job if she sleeps with him.
Charles Kamen. He brings the right attitude to the kind of character this is supposed to be, and he does a fantastic job with it.
Then we cut back to Nico, whose new boss is also hitting on him. None of this has anything to do with anything. It's so pointless and stupid. It's such a waste of time. A wrecked ship has washed up on a shore, what appears to be maybe like the Caribbean or Jamaica or something like that. It has these giant gashes down the side. I assume it's the same ship that we saw earlier, but I don't think it is. Whatever. I wasn't paying enough attention to notice, to be honest with you. John Reno's character shows up and claims he's with an insurance company, and he tries to kind of pry some information out of the military, and they're telling him, shove off.
He meets a very pompous woman who says that she's a paleontologist.
My least favorite character is Dr. Elise Chapman. She's very forward in parts, which is good, but she's also very annoying and keeps saying how Ferris shouldn't be there.
And awkwardly flirts with him.
So our next thing we see a couple of ships, and 3 fishing ships off the eastern seaboard of the United States. It's the middle of the night, and they're all kind of just trawling through the water. They have their nets in the water and everything, and they all stall in place. Now their engines are still running. They're still, full throttle. They should be moving forward, but they're not. And then kind of scarily, they start moving backwards against their engines to the point where they start being pulled under the water.
Meanwhile, 3 fishing boats are somehow dragged under by a net during a storm. I'm not exactly sure about the physics behind this scene. Wouldn't, the net break before the boat sank? Still, it's a terrifying scene, and it's very well shot.
Everybody abandoned ship, and they're popping up like, what the hell?
That would suck. Even if you have, a life raft or something, that's not... No. You don't want to be lost in the middle of the ocean during a storm. Nightmare feel right there.
And then the ships pop up out of the water. So clearly something was they keep saying something about cut the nets. So it's assumed that maybe Godzilla was eating their fish. Anyway, so we cut to Nico and the military at their HQ, and they get a report of what just happened to those fishing ships. And Nico hypothesizes Godzilla has been created by radiation and is not some hidden ancient species.
The paleontologist thinks it's a type of Allosaurus. For the record, the Allosaurus is actually a lot smaller than a T-Rex. That said, I'm with the paleontologist on this. I'm definitely more Team Dinosaur than Team Lizard. Occam's razor and all that.
There's something about Nico. Nothing he hypothesizes in this movie has any scientific evidence behind it whatsoever. And a lot of it ends up being true just because the plot needs it to be true. But for them to reach these conclusions is ridiculous. And everyone's just like, okay, thanks, worm guy. Topolopolis. I don't know, man. It's just really annoying. So, yeah, he says this is the dawn of a new species, the first of its kind. How the hell does he know that? How? Zero evidence. Good sciencing there, buddy. So then we cut to Nico's ex, or Nick's ex, who's having lunch with her friend and her friend's boyfriend, who's played by Hank Azaria, another Simpsons alum. They're basically telling her, hey, your boss sucks, but you're too nice to get successful because you're such a pushover. She's kind of taking that in, and she sees Nick on TV, and she's like, oh, look, it's my ex-boyfriend. Again, none of this, it's just so, why are we watching this?
I remember I had gone to the theater to see Starship Troopers, and I sat in the theater. I was the only one in there, which was, a treat when you got the theater to yourself. And on came this trailer. There's a little old man walking down the dock, and guys were picking on him and stuff like that, and he chucked his fishing pole out into the water.
So we cut to the docks at the United States, in New York, presumably. Yeah, New York. And there's this a harbor. This old man's going out in the rain. He's going to... Oh, that's another thing. It's raining the entire movie. I don't know why. Maybe Emmerich just likes water or something. I don't know. It's literally raining the entire movie, or at least in New York.
And back in New York, an elderly fisherman is being teased while he's fishing on a dock.
I also really like the opening scene in New York when the fisherman goes out in the middle of a torrential downpour to the East River.
So this old man goes fishing, and this is the scene from the trailer. If anybody's 1,000 years old like I am and actually remembers the trailer for this piece of shit. So he goes out to the end of this long dock, and he sets up his equipment. He starts fishing, and his reel goes out like he's got a bite, and it goes out really fast, and it goes out pretty far, and he's kind of struggling with it. And then this Godzilla just comes up out of the water and walks through the dock as he's running away and just starts trouncing around in New York.
I actually really love this whole scene where he, quote unquote, catches Godzilla.
So it's like a captivating visual, and it looks cool when he comes out of the water. That's actually one of the well done parts. It holds up okay.
Probably the goofiest moment in this film is when the old guy goes out onto the pier to fish.
And the scene begins, and this big giant creature in the water starts coming at him, and something about it never registered Godzilla. But as soon as the words from the creators of Independence Day graced the screen, I knew exactly what it was, and I got hyped.
I love the heckling from Statler and Waldorf, and the old man still probably died running away and slipping on the dock. I mean, he was old.
But I have a couple questions about the scene.
And someone yells, "Hold on to it, Joe, you have a big one." And then Godzilla appears.
I assume we're led to believe that Godzilla is the one that bit his lure. So if that's the case, any movement he would have made would have caused a lot of disturbance in the water, something that large. So is he just like laying at the bottom of the harbor, like near the dock, so presumably where it's relatively shallow, waiting for some stupid shit like this? Then he grabs like a fish and when he turns around, maybe it just doesn't make any damn sense. If you think about it for like 5 seconds, the whole thing falls apart. But regardless, the image of him coming up through the dock and everything's pretty cool.
It's, obviously played for laughs, but it works.
I did and still do love all of the lead up to showing Godzilla's form. From the ship sinking to Godzilla approaching the dock to just seeing the boat like hanging off of these giant spikes.
I will say, like the original, this movie does an amazing job of really drawing out the buildup and the tension.
Another 90s thing is the constant rain over the entire movie. Sure, it sets the mood, but it also covers the bad CGI.
And something about the CG. When he's like, once he gets out of the water and he's like walking on stuff, even though you don't really see full shots of him right away, it's not that great. Jurassic Park came out, 5-6 years before this, and it looks way better. Somehow this crappy CG, for me, just seems worse than like the old Kong and Toho stuff, where it's like, the backdrops and models and all that stuff. And I don't know, back then it was like, you had to get creative with how you made your movies. Now it's just like you plug everything into a computer, and most of the time it doesn't hold up that well after like a year, even The Matrix, for God's sake. One thing I thought was funny is when he's marching around New York and trashing stuff, it's like every 20 seconds a boat falls out of the sky. Like he's just got all these boats in his mouth and he's just kind of letting them drop one at a time. It happens at least 2 or 3 times. It's pretty funny.
Everything about this before you see his full form is still really cool. Like, it was so cool that Godzilla 2000 mimicked most of it.
We cut back into the newsroom office, and hey, look, it's Nancy Cartwright, Bart Simpson, another Simpsons alum. Nico's girl, who we learn her name is Audrey, and Hank Azaria's character are at the same restaurant from before when Godzilla walks by. Azaria's character runs outside and grabs a video camera from like an overturned news van and chases after after Godzilla, while his girlfriend yells at him and calls him a retard. But, even for the late 90s, that seems like, come on, guys. So, yeah, another thing, there's a few times in this movie where Godzilla's about to step on people or about to do something, and they do, like, absolutely nothing to avoid it. In this case, he's about to step on Hank Azaria, who literally just stands still and screams for, like, 20 seconds. Thankfully for him, the foot lands with a toe on either side of him, and he's okay. We then learn, actually, before we get there, I just want to point out, the destruction of the city is all really cool. Like, the practical effects used is really well done on the, what is probably sound stages and stuff like that. That all looks pretty good. Even the CG on the destruction looks pretty good. But anything organic doesn't look great.
Some of it was really bad. At least they still use some of the puppets in the movie.
Sure, the CGI doesn't hold up super well, but it's still effective, especially because of how they use the Jaws effect. So the military sets up in Jersey.
So the military set up a safe zone in New Jersey right across from the river, and the mayor of New Jersey lands in the safe zone to meet with the military. And Jean Reno pops up and introduces himself like, hey, we're here to support you guys however you need it. And he plants a listening device on the mayor's collar. We then learn that Harry Shearer can't find his press ID when he's trying to get into this big, meeting or whatever. And we see that Audrey has stolen his press ID to give herself access.
Anyway, the worms didn't make sense. I didn't find any of the human characters very compelling.
If there's one standout outside of Jean Reno, a character that I really like in this movie is Hank Azaria's character, Animal.
I actually think my favorite character is Animal, because he seems kind of dumb, but he knows how to do his job.
I thought Hank Azaria was hilarious. I didn't know he was the guy from The Simpsons when I was a kid.
I like him as an actor, and this was the very first time I'd actually gotten to see him act, because before this, I only knew him as a voice on The Simpsons,
There's 3 members of the Simpsons cast in this film.
Which, funny enough, isn't that crazy? You got 3 actors from The Simpsons that appear in this movie. I mean, I wonder if they did that intentionally or if it was just some happy coincidence that just occurred.
So we learned that, like, Hank Azaria's character is actually a cameraman who works at the same newsroom. I must have missed that. His girlfriend then calls him a wop, which is like another, like, Jesus Christ, guys. Audrey sees Nick on TV again, and she offers to use her connection to Nick for, like, they're at the office. She offers to use her connection to her ex-boyfriend for information on what's going on. What a bitch. The Harry Shearer is just like, oh, I can't be bothered to listen to you, little girl. The men are playing. So, whatever.
I love that Animal goes after the Big G with a VHS camcorder.
But Animal, and even his scene where Godzilla stomps on him or doesn't, he goes between his toes. I understand that's kitschy, cheesy, whatever, but it's fun. It's silly. Don't take it too seriously.
Keep in mind, this is also kind of the anti-90s movie.
Gene Siskel, Roger Ebert parodies of the mayor and his assistant. It's also pretty funny.
Oh, and the mayor being played by the banker from Blank Check. I love to hate that guy.
Mayor Ebert.
Mayor Ebert and his assistant Gene. I know that was kind of a dig at Siskel and Ebert.
Can you hear my eyes rolling?
But I feel like it's a little too on the nose.
A good chuckle. Unfortunately, they don't ever really do anything with it, like kill them or stomp on them.
Maybe if they had been a little bit more subtle with it.
And I'm pretty sure Siskel and Ebert even pointed that out in their review of this movie. Like, you put us in your monster movie and you don't even murder us? What the hell?
I kind of probably would have had a little bit more fun with that.
The Mysterious Frenchman, played by Jean Reno.
Wait, take that back. My favorite character is Jean Reno.
If anyone is the action star, it's Jean Reno, and that dude just blows it out of the water.
Jean Reno, I think now, in retrospect, does a great job.
The leader of the French guys is also very good.
He's very funny.
He's suave. He's cool. He's just the badass that Jean Reno is.
He's a French national treasure.
This guy was actually already a famous French actor, but he's been in a ton of movies since this one.
The recurring joke about the Frenchman not liking American coffee, that's bad.
Dude's always complaining about his French roast coffee to his undercover paramilitary guy.
I loved every scene he was in.
We see Jean Reno and his crew in the back of a UPS truck, and they're listening on the military, so we now know that anything the military says, these guys are in on. We don't know who they are yet. Presumably insurance guys. That doesn't make any sense. But anyway, they believe, the military, that Godzilla is burrowing and is hiding inside of a building or underneath a building. And it looks like Godzilla literally burrowed underground or through a building. Whatever.
He's a spy, a technician, a soldier. He's just great. And I loved his reaction to the crap coffee every time.
He's just so French and obtuse. He's always drinking coffee.
This is before third-rate coffee being available on every corner.
I wonder if real French roast coffee tastes any better, because I have hated every single French roast I have ever had.
And at the end of the movie, he's the one driving the cab that saves the team that saves the day. So if it weren't for him, hey, everything would have gone to shit.
The Americans are not all strong-willed. Basically, every American is kind of weak. Like, the primary cast of this film are all very weak, and they are trying to overcome their problems. The most gung-ho confident person in this film is a French dude.
So, I have a question. Why does Godzilla go from the Pacific Ocean to New York, of all places? Like, did he cross over the Panama Canal at some point, or go around South America? Did I miss something here? Did he go the long way around Africa?
So we check in with the military, and we learn that they've lost sight of Godzilla. They've lost sight of Godzilla. I mean, they're like, did he turn invisible? Like, they have no idea where this thing went, which is crazy to me. I mean, it's so stupid. And Matthew Broderick says, I'm paraphrasing, but it's something like he is, like no other island in the world, this is a place he can easily hide. He's in there somewhere. All right. You've got millions of people in the island of Manhattan, and you're going to sit there and say this giant T-Rex looking thing can easily hide there? I've never been to New York myself, but from everything I've ever seen or heard, that seems pretty impossible to me. But whatever.
But I don't know how it would be tunneling under Manhattan.
The subway is totally jacked up.
The tunnel system is extensive, but it's only so large. And there's a reason that they built those skyscrapers on the island. It's a pretty sturdy bedrock. You're not digging through that thing.
With how much Godzilla burrows his way underground, it's amazing that, like, all of New York hasn't dropped into a sinkhole by now.
Some of the coolest moments in this film is just watching Godzilla just wreck New York, just walking through all these buildings and just, like, going to town and just seeing how massive Godzilla actually is in this film.
We learn that Manhattan is under complete evacuation, and somehow there's a shot where you see Godzilla has walked through the MetLife building, like the middle of it, and there's just a giant hole in the middle of the building, but like it didn't collapse. I don't know, it just looks really weird. This movie sucks.
Man, this movie is so pre 9/11. Yeesh.
Nick suggests that instead of chasing down Godzilla like they're trying to, they just need to figure out what it is that Godzilla needs or wants, and they can bait it. It'll come to them.
I remembered something about this movie that didn't actually happen in it, which is that I thought there was a plot to try to get an explosive into the belly of the beast, but what it actually is they just set a trap with a bunch of fish.
They send troops into the city.
The dudes in like squads with M16s aren't taking out Godzilla.
And they dump a massive load of tuna fish in the middle of the street.
By bringing in like 14 dump trucks full of fish.
Like 16 dump trucks full of fish.
And dumping them in a pile.
So they get a bunch of dump trucks from the city and pile up like this huge mound of fish in this middle of this intersection for bait.
It's a lot of fish. Like all of the fish.
And I remembered that vaguely, but what I thought they did was put a bomb down and then dump all the fish on top of it so that Godzilla would eat the bomb.
For some reason, Matthew Broderick keeps taking photos with his disposable Kodak camera. How quaint. Gotta love the product placement in this movie. The worm scientist starts bossing around soldiers.
And Broderick realizes they gotta lift all the manhole covers. So they run out and they're uncovering them to let the smell like go underground. And of course Broderick runs off by himself and he opens up a manhole and he hears, breathing and everything under the ground.
No, they didn't do that. They just put down a bunch of fish and then the plan was, and now we'll shoot it with guns.
And then the ground starts cracking underneath him and he just watches it.
Why the does everyone just keep standing there when shit's going down? It's like a constant trope in this movie.
Like, move your ass, you idiot. Anyway,